Hello, everyone, and welcome back to English in Advance, the podcast where we take your English skills to the next level right here and right now. I am your host, Jessica, and I am so incredibly happy that you are here with me today. We have a really special episode planned for you because today we are going to dive deep into the world of real English conversations. Now, I know that sometimes when you are listening to a podcast or maybe watching a movie in English, it can feel like everyone is speaking way too fast or they are using words that you have never heard before in your life. It can be frustrating, can it not? You might feel like you understand the grammar rules perfectly when you have a textbook open in front of you, but the moment you try to speak to a real person or listen to a real conversation, suddenly everything feels a little bit messy. That is exactly why I created today's episode for you. We are going to explore the kind of English that people actually use in their daily lives. Not the stiff, formal English that you might find in an old grammar book, but the living, breathing language that friends use with each other, colleagues use at work, and strangers use when they meet on the street. This episode is designed specifically for B1 to B2 learners, which means if you can understand the main points of clear standard input on familiar matters, and you can deal with most situations likely to arise while traveling, then this is the perfect level for you. But even if you are a little bit above or below that level, I promise you are going to learn something new today. Because we are going to break everything down. We will look at common phrases, we will talk about intonation, and we will practice together so that you can start sounding more natural and more confident. So grab a cup of coffee or tea, get comfortable, and let's get started on this journey together. Imagine for a moment that you are walking through a park on a sunny Saturday afternoon. You see a friend of yours sitting on a bench reading a book. This is a very common situation, but sometimes it is hard to know exactly what to say to start the conversation in a natural way. You do not want to sound like a robot. You want to sound like a friend. The first thing we need to look at is how we actually greet people. In a textbook, you might learn phrases like, "How do you do?" or "Good morning, how are you?" While these are correct, they can sometimes sound a little bit too formal, especially if you are talking to a friend. In real English conversations, we often use what we call casual greetings. Let me give you some examples of how this sounds in the real world. Instead of saying, "Hello, how are you today?" you might hear something like, "Hey, what is up?" Or maybe something a little simpler like, "How is it going?" These phrases are everywhere. When I say "what is up," I am not literally asking what is above your head in the sky. It is just a way of asking how you are or what is happening in your life right now. A very common response to this is, "Not much," or "Not much, just working." It is short, it is sweet, and it keeps the conversation moving. Another great phrase that I love to use is, "How have you been?" This is slightly different from "How are you?" When you say "How are you?" you are asking about the person's state right now in this exact second. But when you say, "How have you been?" you are asking about their life over the last few weeks or months since the last time you saw them. It shows a deeper interest. You might reply with something like, "I have been pretty good, thanks for asking," or "Honestly, I have been a bit busy lately." Let's try to put this into a little conversation so you can hear the flow. Imagine I am the friend on the bench and you are walking by. You wave your hand and you say, "Hey, Jessica, long time no see." That phrase, "long time no see," is a classic idiom that we use when we haven't seen someone in a while. It is informal and very friendly. I would look up from my book smile and say, "Oh, hey there, I know, right? It has been ages." The phrase, "it has been ages," is another way to say it has been a very long time. Then you might ask, "So how have you been?" And I would answer honestly, maybe by saying, "I have been doing well, just taking it easy this weekend. What about you?" Now notice how I ended my sentence with, "What about you?" This is a very quick and natural way to turn the question back to the other person. We often drop the full sentence, which would be, "How have you been doing about you?" and just say, "What about you?" or simply you. Now I want you to practice this with me. I want you to imagine that you are meeting a friend you have not seen in 3 months. I am going to ask you the question and I want you to answer out loud. Do not just think the answer in your head. Speaking out loud is so important for building muscle memory in your mouth. Are you ready? Here is the question. "Hey stranger, long time no see, how have things been?" Go ahead and answer. Maybe you said things are good, or I have been busy with work. Whatever you said is perfect. The important thing is that you spoke. If you want to add a little more detail, you could say, "I have actually started a new hobby recently." That is a great B2 level sentence because it adds new information and invites more questions. It makes the conversation more interesting than just saying, "I am fine." Now that we have broken the ice, let's talk about what happens next in a real conversation. After the greeting, usually we move into what we call small talk. Small talk is that light, casual conversation that we have when we first see someone or when we are waiting for something like standing in line or waiting for an elevator. It is not deep philosophical conversation, but it is the glue that holds social interactions together. For B1 and B2, learners' small talk can sometimes be scary because you have to think fast. But do not worry, there are some simple topics that almost everyone uses, and if you master these topics, you can handle almost any social situation. The most common small talk topic by far is the weather. I know it sounds a bit boring, but trust me, it is the safest and most effective way to start chatting with anyone. In England or America, talking about the weather is almost a sport. We love to complain about it or praise it. If it is raining, you might say, "I cannot believe this rain. It has been pouring all day." The word pouring here means raining very heavily. It creates a strong image of water being poured from a bucket. If it is sunny, you might hear people say, "It is absolutely beautiful out there today. We should go for a walk." Notice the use of the word absolutely. We often use strong adverbs like absolutely, totally, or really with weather adjectives to make our feelings clearer. You would not say, "It is fairly beautiful today." That sounds strange. You would say, "It is absolutely beautiful." Another safe and very common small talk topic is work or school. But again, we need to make it sound natural. Asking, "What is your job?" sounds a bit like a police interview. Instead, we ask, "So what do you do?" This is the standard short way to ask about someone's occupation. If they are students, we might ask, "What are you studying?" Now, when you answer this question, try to add a little bit of emotion or detail. Instead of just saying, "I am a teacher," you could say, "I am a teacher at the local high school, and I really enjoy it, although it is quite tiring." Adding the bit about it being tiring makes you sound human and relatable. Everyone understands that work can be tiring. It opens the door for the other person to agree and say, "Oh, I bet that is a lot of work," or "My sister is a teacher too. I know how hard you guys work." Let's move on to a situation that I know many of you worry about, making plans with friends. This is where we often use the future tense, but not in the way you might expect. In a textbook, you learn, I will go to the cinema, or I am going to visit my grandmother. These are grammatically correct, but in casual conversation, we use different structures. The most common way to talk about future plans with friends is using the present continuous tense. It sounds technical, but it is actually very simple. We say, what are you doing this weekend instead of what will you do this weekend? It sounds more immediate and more like a plan that is already forming. Imagine you are on the phone with a friend and you want to see a movie. You might start by asking, are you doing anything this Saturday? This is a polite and indirect way to see if they are free. Notice I did not say, what are your plans? That can sound a little demanding. Are you doing anything is softer. If your friend is free, they might say, no, I do not think so. Why? What is up? Now you have the green light to suggest something. You can say, well, I was thinking of checking out that new action movie at the mall. Do you want to come? The phrase I was thinking of is a brilliant tool for making suggestions. It is much softer than I want to go to the movies. I was thinking of shows that the idea is just a thought right now, not a strict command. It gives the other person space to say yes or no easily. If the friend agrees, they might say, yeah, that sounds great. What time are you thinking? Notice the use of we're thinking again. It keeps the planning process collaborative. You are not bossing them around. You might answer, how about the 7 o'clock show? That way we can grab a bite to eat beforehand. Grab a bite to eat is a wonderful idiomatic expression. It simply means to eat a meal, usually something quick or casual. It sounds much better than saying, let us consume some food. So now you have successfully made a plan using natural, casual English. You use the present continuous tense for plans. You use soft suggestions, like I was thinking of, and you used a common idiom, grab a bite. These are the keys to sounding fluent. But what if you are busy? Declining an invitation can be awkward. You do not want to hurt your friend's feelings, but you cannot go. Many learners simply say, no, I cannot. This can sound a bit rude or abrupt in English. We have a cultural tendency to soften bad news. So instead of just saying no, we usually give a reason and then express regret. For example, if your friend asks you to that movie and you are busy, you could say, oh, that sounds like so much fun, and I would love to go. But I have already promised to help my parents move furniture that day. Let's break this down. First, I validated their idea by saying it sounds fun. This is polite. Then I used the phrase I would love to go, but. This structure is perfect for refusals. It shows that your intention is positive. Finally, I gave a valid excuse. To finish it off politely, you should always suggest a future meeting. You could say, can we take a rain check though? Maybe next weekend. Let's pause here and talk about that phrase, rain check. This is a very common American idiom used when you want to decline an invitation now, but accept it for a later time. It comes from baseball. If a game was canceled because of rain, the spectators were given a check or a ticket that allowed them to come back for another game. So when you say, can I take a rain check, you are politely saying, I cannot come today, but I want to come another time. It is a fantastic phrase to have in your vocabulary because it saves face and keeps the friendship strong. Now, I want to take a moment to talk about something that is often overlooked in English classes. This is the art of active listening. In a conversation, your job is not just to speak. Half of the conversation is listening and showing the other person that you are listening. If you stay completely silent while someone is telling a story, they might think you are bored or that you do not understand. In English, we use small words and sounds to show we are engaged. We call these back-channeling cues. For example, if I am telling you a story about my weekend, I might say, "So I went to this restaurant and the food was amazing." You should respond with something like, "Oh wow," or "Really?" These small words encourage me to keep talking. There are so many of these cues. If I tell you about a problem I have, you might say, "Oh no, that is terrible," or "Oh, you poor thing." If I tell you good news, you might say, "That is awesome," or "No way, that is great." These reactions are vital for a natural conversation. They show empathy and interest. For a B1 or B2, learner mastering these small reactions can instantly make you sound more advanced. You are not just a passive listener, you are an active participant in the conversation. So next time you are practicing with a partner or listening to a podcast, try to use at least 3 different reaction words. It will change the dynamic of your conversation completely. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about shopping. Shopping involves a lot of specific interactions and polite language. Whether you are buying clothes, groceries, or electronics, there is a pattern to these conversations. Let's imagine you are in a clothing store. You have picked up a pair of jeans, but you are not sure if they fit. You need to ask for a different size. You do not say, "Give me a smaller size." That is too direct and impolite. Instead, you should use the phrase, "Do you have this in a..." For example, you would go to the shop assistant and say, "Excuse me, do you have these jeans in a size 32?" This is polite and clear. The assistant will likely answer, "Let me check for you," or "I think we might have one left in the back." If the item is not there, you need to understand the response. They might say, "Sorry, we are all out of that size." The phrase "all out" means we have 0 stock left. It is completely gone. At this point, you might feel disappointed, but again, we stay polite. You would say, "Oh, that is a shame. Thanks for checking anyway." Now imagine you want to try on the jeans. You need to ask where the changing rooms are. A natural way to ask is, "Could you tell me where the fitting rooms are?" Note that I used could instead of can. Could is slightly more polite, which is always a good idea when talking to staff in a professional setting. They will point and say, "Just over there behind the mirrors." After you try on the clothes, maybe you decide to buy them. You go to the counter to pay. The cashier will usually start with a standard script. They might say, "Hi there, did you find everything okay today?" This is a very common greeting in American stores. You should not answer with just yes. A better answer is, "Yes, actually, I did, thank you." Then they will say, "Are you ready to pay?" You nod and hand over your card. In many countries, you might be asked for a PIN. In the US, they might ask debit or credit. If you are confused by the payment machine, it is totally normal to ask. You can simply say, "Should I tap or insert the card?" Technology changes fast, so even native speakers ask this sometimes. Now let's move to a slightly more challenging scenario. Expressing opinions and agreeing or disagreeing. This is a key skill for B2 level learners. You want to move beyond simple statements like, "I like this" or "I do not like this." You want to explain why. A great way to start an opinion is with the phrase "I feel like" or "in my opinion." But there are other more conversational ways too. You might say, "If you ask me," or "the way I see it." These phrases signal that what follows is your personal perspective. For example, let's talk about movies. If I ask you what you thought about a popular film, you could say, Honestly, I felt like it was a bit too long. The story was good, but the pacing was slow. This is a great answer because it is balanced. You gave a positive point, the story was good, and a negative point, the pacing was slow. This is called hedging. It makes your criticism sound less harsh. When you agree with someone, you can do more than just say yes. You can say, I could not agree more. This is a very strong agreement. It means you agree 100%. Another nice phrase is, you can say that again. This is an idiom that means you are absolutely right, usually, about something negative. For example, if I say, this traffic is terrible today, you might respond, you can say that again, I have been stuck here for 20 minutes. Disagreeing is where things get tricky. You do not want to cause an argument. In English, we tend to use very polite language when we disagree. We rarely say, you are wrong. Instead, we say, I see what you mean, but, or, that is a fair point, however. These phrases validate the other person's opinion first before introducing your own different view. Let's practice this. Imagine your friend says, I think studying grammar is the most important part of learning English. You disagree because you think speaking is more important. You could say, I see what you mean, grammar is important, but don't you think speaking practice is actually more crucial for fluency? By asking a question, don't you think you are inviting them to consider your point of view rather than forcing it on them? It is a much softer and more social way to communicate. Now, I want to talk to you about something that happens all the time in real life, but is rarely taught in textbooks. That is interruptions. Sometimes you are talking and someone interrupts you, or maybe you need to interrupt someone else because you have to leave, or you have something important to add. Interrupting is often seen as rude, but it does not have to be. There are polite ways to do it. If you need to interrupt a conversation to ask a question or make a comment, you can use phrases like, sorry to interrupt, but, or can I just jump in here? These little introductions act as a buffer. They show respect. For example, imagine two colleagues are discussing a project and you have a relevant idea. You wait for a tiny pause and you say, sorry to jump in here, but I think Sarah has a really good point about the deadline. This shows you are listening and adding value, not just barging in. On the other hand, what do you do if someone interrupts you? It can be frustrating. You have the floor and you want to finish your thought. You can gently say, just let me finish this point. Or perhaps, as I was saying. These phrases help you regain control of the conversation without being aggressive. Mastering the flow of conversation, knowing when to speak and when to yield the floor, is a sign of a truly advanced speaker. Let's talk about storytelling. We all love telling stories to our friends about things that happen to us. Maybe a funny incident on the bus or a strange coincidence. A good story needs structure, and good structure needs linking words. Words like suddenly, meanwhile, and eventually are the glue of a good story. Instead of saying, I went to the store, I saw my friend, we talked. You should use linking words to create flow. You would say, so I went to the store yesterday and suddenly I bumped into my old college friend. We actually hadn't seen each other in years, so we stood in the aisle talking for like 20 minutes. Eventually, we realized we were blocking the way, and we moved. See how much smoother that sounds. The word eventually implies that time passed. Suddenly adds drama, so creates a connection between the events. For B1 and B2 learners, I recommend focusing on the word eventually. It is very useful. It means in the end, especially after a long time or a lot of problems. For example, you can say I was looking for my keys everywhere, and eventually I found them in the refrigerator. That paints a clear picture of the struggle before the resolution. Try to tell a short story to yourself right now using the word eventually. It could be about how you learned to ride a bike or how you cooked a difficult meal. Just a few sentences to practice that flow. Now, I want to address a question I get asked a lot by my students. Jessica, how do I understand native speakers when they speak so fast? This is a huge challenge. The secret is understanding something called connected speech. Native speakers do not pronounce every word separately like a robot. We link words together. For example, the phrase pick it up. In a textbook, it sounds like pick it up. But in real conversation, it sounds like pick it up. We combine the words. The K sound at the end of pick connects to the I in it. And the T in it becomes a D sound between vowels. This is why listening can be so hard. You know the word pick and the word up, but you might not hear them clearly in the middle of a sentence. Let's look at another example. The phrase going to. You've probably heard this pronounced as gonna. I am going to go becomes I am gonna go. This is not slang. This is just natural pronunciation. It happens all the time. Another one is want to, which becomes wanna. Do you wanna go becomes do you wanna go. Understanding these reductions is a game changer for your listening skills. When you are listening to this podcast or watching TV, try to listen for these blended sounds. It will help you stop translating every single word in your head and start hearing the whole chunks of language. We should also talk about the word like. You might hear native speakers using the word like constantly. For example, it was like really big, and I was like, no way. This can be confusing for learners. In this context, like is not a comparison. It is a filler word or a quotative. We use it to introduce what someone said or to emphasize a description. It is very informal. You do not need to use it in a job interview, but you should know what it means so you can understand casual conversation. When someone says, I was like so surprised, they mean I was very surprised. It adds emphasis. When they say she was like, I hate this job, and I was like, you should quit, they are using like to quote what people said instead of saying, she said, I hate this job. It makes the story feel more immediate and active. Let's move on to something very practical. Asking for directions. Even with GPS on our phones, sometimes we get lost or we need to find a specific shop in a new city. Asking for directions involves a lot of specific vocabulary. Words like turn left, go straight on the corner, and roundabout. But the most important part is the prepositions. Prepositions are small words like at, in, on, next to, across from. They tell us exactly where things are. If you get these wrong, it can be confusing. For example, saying, the bank is in the corner sounds wrong to a native ear. We say the bank is on the corner. Why, I do not know, it is just a rule. It is on the corner of the street. If something is opposite something else, we say across from. The school is across from the park. This means they face each other with a street or space in between. If things are close but not touching, we say next to or beside. Now imagine you are lost. You see a local resident. You approach them and say, excuse me, I seem to be a bit lost. Could you help me find the train station? This is a polite opening. I seem to be lost is a softer way to say I am lost. The person will hopefully help. They might say, sure, go straight down this road and take the second left. The station will be on your right. You can't miss it. You can't miss it is a common phrase used when something is very obvious or large. It is meant to be reassuring. When you get the directions, it is polite to repeat them back to check your understanding. You can say, "So straight ahead, then second left, and it is on the right." This shows you were listening, and it gives them a chance to correct you if you got it wrong. If you have no idea what they just said because they spoke too fast, it is okay to ask them to repeat. You can say, "Sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Could you say that one more time? I didn't catch." That is a very natural way to say, "I didn't hear you." It suggests that the problem was the sound or the speed, not your intelligence. Now let's imagine a scenario where you have a problem. Maybe you ordered a steak, but it arrived cold. Or maybe your hotel room is not clean. This is called making a complaint. It can be uncomfortable, but it is necessary. The key to making a complaint in English is to be firm but polite. Do not get angry. Start by getting the person's attention politely. "Excuse me, could you come here for a moment?" Then state the problem clearly but without blaming the person personally. Instead of saying, "You gave me cold food," say, "I am afraid this steak is a little bit cold. Could you possibly warm it up for me?" The phrase "I am afraid" is a great tool. It does not mean you are scared. It is a polite way to introduce bad news or a complaint. "I am afraid there is a mistake with the bill. I am afraid this room has not been cleaned." It softens the blow. Also, using phrases like, "Could you possibly" or "Would you mind" adds a layer of politeness. "Would you mind checking the room?" This is the B2 level of politeness. It shows that you understand social norms and you are treating the staff with respect even though there is a problem. Usually, the staff will apologize and fix the issue. If they apologize, you should accept it gracefully. "No problem," or "Thanks for sorting that out." I want to share a tip for improving your vocabulary. It is not just about learning new words. It is about learning how words live together. This is called collocation. Words have friends that they like to hang out with. For example, we say take a photo. We do not do a photo or make a photo. The verb take goes with photo. If you say make a photo, people will understand you, but it will sound foreign. Another example is homework. We do homework. We don't make homework unless we are a teacher creating an assignment. Paying attention to these word partnerships will make your English sound much more natural. When you learn a new noun, try to learn the verb that goes with it. Don't just write down decision, write down make a decision. Let's have a little practice session right now focusing on collocations. I will give you a verb, and I want you to think of the noun that usually goes with it. Ready? The verb is catch. What do we catch? We catch a cold. We catch a bus. We catch a ball. See how one verb connects to many nouns. Another one is heavy. What can be heavy? Traffic can be heavy. Rain can be heavy. A suitcase can be heavy. But we do not say a heavy wind. We say a strong wind. This is why learning collocations is so interesting. It is like learning the secret personality of the words. I want to talk to you now about expressing probability and prediction. This is a really fun part of English because it lets you guess about the future. We use modal verbs for this. Words like might, could, must, and can't. When we are sure about something, we use must. If I see wet umbrellas in the hallway, I can say, it must be raining outside. I have a logical deduction. I didn't see the rain, but the evidence tells me it is true. The opposite is can't. If someone tells me that the President of the United States is in my kitchen, I would say, you must be joking. He can't be in my kitchen. That is impossible. For things we are unsure about, we use might or could. Maybe you are looking at dark clouds. You would say, it looks like it might rain later, or it could rain later. There is a possibility. Understanding these subtle differences is key to the B2 level. It allows you to express nuance. You are not just saying yes or no, you are talking about levels of certainty. Try to use these in your daily thoughts. Look out the window and make a guess about the weather. It must be cold today because everyone is wearing coats. It could snow later because the sky is gray. This kind of internal monologue is fantastic practice. Now let's talk about a situation that we all find ourselves in sometimes. That awkward moment when you forget a word. You are speaking English and suddenly your mind goes blank. You need a word, but it is gone. This happens to native speakers too, believe me. The trick is to have strategies to handle it so the conversation does not stop dead. Instead of freezing or switching to your native language, you can use English to describe the word you are looking for. For example, if you forget the word wallet, you can say, "You know that thing where you keep your money and credit cards." Usually the person you are talking to will say, "Oh, you mean your wallet?" And you can say, "Yes, exactly, wallet." This technique is called circumlocution. It means talking around the word. Another strategy is to use vague language, words like stuff and thingy. These are informal but very useful in a pinch. You might say, "Pass me that thingy over there," pointing at a tool, or "I need to buy some stuff for dinner." It is not precise, but it communicates the general idea. As a B1 or B2 learner, you should not rely on these words all the time, but having them in your back pocket can reduce a lot of stress. It gives you confidence that even if you forget a word, you can still communicate your meaning. That is the ultimate goal of language after all communication, not perfection. Let's move to a topic that is often difficult to discuss: feelings and emotions. Being able to say how you feel is vital for deep relationships. Often we stick to basic words like happy, sad, or angry, but English has such a rich vocabulary for emotions. Instead of just happy, you can be delighted, thrilled, or content. Delighted is a very strong, happy feeling, often because of good news. Thrilled is extremely excited happiness. Content is a calm, peaceful happiness. Instead of just angry, you can be annoyed, frustrated, or furious. Annoyed is a little bit angry. Frustrated is angry because you cannot do what you want. Furious is extremely angry. Using these specific words makes you a much better storyteller. Instead of saying "I was angry because the bus was late," you can say "I was so frustrated because the bus was late and I had an important meeting." Frustrated fits better here because the feeling comes from being blocked from your goal. Think about the last time you felt a strong emotion. Try to name it with a more specific word. Maybe you were disappointed. That means sad because an expectation was not met. Maybe you were anxious. That means nervous about the future. Expanding your emotional vocabulary helps you connect with people on a deeper level. It shows maturity in the language. I want to spend a little time talking about phrasal verbs. I know many of you hate phrasal verbs. They can be a nightmare. A phrasal verb is a verb plus a particle like up, down, on, or off. The tricky part is that the meaning often changes completely. For example, the verb look. Look means to see with your eyes, but look after means to take care of someone. Look up means to search for information. Look forward to means to be excited about the future. The particle changes everything. My advice for learning phrasal verbs is to learn them in context. Do not just memorize a list. Learn a sentence. I look after my little brother. I need to look up this word. Let's focus on 3 very common phrasal verbs that you can use in conversation today. The first one is figure out. This means to solve or understand something. I can't figure out how to use this app. The second one is run out of. This means to have no more left. We have run out of milk. I need to go to the store. The third one is give up. This means to stop trying. It was hard, but I didn't give up. Try to use these in your practice. They are incredibly common, and using them correctly will make you sound much more natural instantly. Do not be afraid of them. Embrace them as a shortcut to fluency. We are getting towards the end of our time together today, but before we go, I want to cover one last essential topic: saying goodbye. Just like greetings, goodbyes can be formal or informal. A simple goodbye is often a bit too formal or dramatic for friends. We usually shorten it to bye or see ya. See ya is very common and friendly. It implies we will see each other again. You can also add a time reference. See you later, see you tomorrow, see you next week. Another great phrase is take care. It is a warm way to wish someone well as you part. It shows affection. If you are leaving a group of people, you can say, I have to get going. This signals your intention to leave before you actually say the word goodbye. It prepares people for your departure. You can follow it with a reason, like I have to get going, I have an early start tomorrow. Then you say the goodbyes. It was great seeing you. Let's catch up again soon. Catch up is another phrasal verb that means to talk and update each other on life. It is the perfect way to end a social interaction. It leaves the door open for the next meeting. My friends, we have covered so much ground today. We talked about greetings and small talk. We discussed making plans and polite refusals. We explored the art of active listening and giving opinions. We navigated shopping and asking for directions. We delved into connected speech as phrasal verbs. And we practiced how to say goodbye. I hope you feel a little bit more confident about your English skills after listening to this. Remember that learning a language is a marathon, not a sprint. It takes time and patience. Do not be afraid to make mistakes. Mistakes are the proof that you are trying. I want to leave you with a small challenge for today. I want you to pick one phrase that you learned today and use it in a real conversation or write it down in a sentence. Maybe you will use the phrase I was thinking of to make a suggestion. Or maybe you will use the phrase, I see what you mean, to disagree politely. Whatever you choose, take that small step. It is the small steps that lead to big changes. It is so good to have you here with me again, Jessica, your host, continuing our journey into real English conversations. I hope you are feeling a little more confident after the first part of our session. But do not worry if you still feel a bit shaky. That is totally normal. Learning a language is like building a house. You have to lay the bricks one by one, and today we are going to lay a few more very important bricks. We are going to tackle some situations that make many learners nervous because they involve specific vocabulary and a bit of quick thinking. But I promise to keep it simple and clear, just like always. We are going to talk about technology and phone calls. We will visit the doctor. We will navigate the world of professional emails. And we will even talk about how to handle emergencies. So take a deep breath and let's jump right back in. Let's start with something that has become a huge part of our lives, technology, and specifically smartphones. We use them every single day, but do you know how to talk about the problems that happen with them in English? Imagine you are on a video call with a friend, maybe using Zoom or Skype or FaceTime, and suddenly the image freezes. You can see your friend, but they are not moving. It is awkward. In your native language, you might have a specific word for this, but in English, we have a few common phrases. The most natural thing to say is, "You are freezing." This does not mean they are cold. It means their video image has stopped moving. You might say, "Hey, you are freezing, I can't see you moving." Or you might say, "Your screen is frozen." Another very common issue is when the audio stops working or becomes unclear. We often say, "You are breaking up." This phrase comes from the idea that the signal is broken into pieces. If I say, "You are breaking up," I mean I can only hear parts of what you are saying, like every other word. You might hear someone say, "Can you hear me now?" You are breaking up a little bit. If the connection is very bad, we might say the connection is terrible or the signal is really weak today. These are much better phrases than simply saying, "The internet is bad," which is grammatically okay, but a bit vague. Using specific vocabulary makes you sound much more aware of the situation. Now let's look at the parts of the phone itself. Do you know the difference between the screen and the case? The screen is the glass front where you see everything. The case is the protective cover you put around the phone. If you drop your phone and the glass cracks, you would say, "I cracked my screen." We don't usually say, "I broke the glass," we specify the screen. Another useful verb regarding phones is to charge. If your battery is low, you need to charge your phone. You might tell a friend, "Hold on, my battery is about to die. I need to plug it in." When we say the battery is dying, we are being a bit dramatic, but it is the standard way to say it is almost empty. Plugging it in means connecting it to the power source. These small distinctions are what make your English sound authentic. Moving on from technology, let's talk about a topic that many people find scary going to the doctor. Health issues can be stressful, and trying to explain your pain in a second language can be even more stressful. But if you know a few key phrases, you can handle this situation calmly. First, let's look at the difference between ache and pain. This is a common confusion. An ache is usually a dull, continuous pain that you feel inside your body. It is not sharp. It lasts for a while. We use ache as a suffix with body parts: headache, toothache, stomachache, backache. These are very common ailments. You would say, "I have a terrible headache." Pain, however, is more general. It can be sharp, sudden, or dull. You might say, "I have a sharp pain in my chest," or "I have a pain in my shoulder." If you go to the doctor will ask, "What seems to be the problem?" This is a standard opening question. You should answer clearly. "I have been having a stomach ache for 2 days. Notice I used the present perfect continuous tense there, "I have been having." This is great for B2 learners because it shows an action that started in the past and is still happening now. The doctor might then ask you to describe the symptoms. A symptom is a physical feature that indicates a condition like a fever, a cough, or a runny nose. The doctor might ask, "Do you have any other symptoms?" You might list them saying, "Yes, I have a slight fever and I feel really dizzy." Dizzy means you feel like you are going to fall down or the room is spinning. These are precise words that help the doctor help you. If the doctor gives you medicine, they might say, "Take this prescription to the pharmacy." A prescription is the paper that allows you to get the medicine. We don't say recipe for medicine. A recipe is for cooking food. A prescription is for medicine. This is a classic mistake that learners make, so try to remember the difference. Now imagine you are at the pharmacy picking up that medicine. You go to the counter and say, "Hi, I need to pick up a prescription." The pharmacist might ask for your name and date of birth. Then they might give you instructions. Take 2 pills a day with food. Do not drive after taking this. It is very important to understand instructions like these. If you don't understand, you must ask. You can say, "Sorry, could you explain that again a bit slower?" Or even better, "Could you write that down for me, please?" There is no shame in asking for written instructions when it comes to your health. It shows responsibility. Let's shift gears now and talk about the world of work, specifically sending professional emails. This is a vital skill for B2 learners who might be using English in their jobs. The tone of an email is very important. It is different from texting a friend. You cannot write "Hey, you" there. You need to be clear and polite. Let's start with the subject line. This is the title of the email. It should be specific. Instead of writing "hello" or "question," you should write "question about the meeting on Friday" or "update on the project." This helps the reader know exactly what the email is about before they open it. When you start the email, you have many choices. If you know the person's name, you can write "Dear Mr. Smith" or "Dear Miss Jones." If you don't know the gender or you want to be neutral, you can use the person's full name, "Dear Alex Brown." If you don't know the name of the person you are writing to, which is common when applying for jobs, you can write "Dear Hiring Manager" or "To whom it may concern." "To whom it may concern" is very formal, so use it only for official documents or cold inquiries. In the body of the email, try to keep your sentences short and clear. Instead of saying, "I was wondering if maybe you could possibly send me the file when you have a moment, if it is not too much trouble," which is too long and wordy, just say, "Please could you send me the file when you have a moment?" It is polite and direct. Ending an email also has its own rules. In the past, we used "yours faithfully" if we didn't know the name and "yours sincerely" if we did. While this is still correct for very formal letters in modern emails, we often use softer closings. "Best regards" is a standard professional closing. "Kind regards" is also very popular. If you are a bit more friendly with the person, you can just say "best" or "thanks." Avoid using phrases like "lots of love" or "XOXO" in a professional context. These are only for close friends or family. Checking your tone is crucial. Before you send an email, read it out loud. Does it sound respectful and clear? If yes, then hit send. Now I want to talk about something that we all have to do but rarely want to do. Talking about money and paying the bill. Imagine you go out for dinner with a group of friends. The food was delicious, the conversation was great, but now the check arrives. This is often called the bill in British English and the check in American English. There is a social dance that happens here. Someone might say, "Don't worry, it is on me." This means that person is paying for everyone. It is a generous offer. If you want to offer to pay for just yourself, you might say, "Let me get this." But most of the time in a group we split the cost. There are a few ways to say "let's pay separately." A very common phrase is "let's go Dutch." This is an idiom that means everyone pays for their own meal. You can also say, "Can we split the bill, please?" This often means dividing the total by the number of people. Or you might say, "We will pay separately." If you need to pay with a card, you might ask, "Do you take credit cards?" Most places do, but it is always good to ask, especially in smaller shops or market stalls. If the service was good, it is customary to leave a tip. In the U.S., tipping is very important. You might ask, how much should we tip? A common answer is usually around 15 or 20%. Handling these financial interactions smoothly shows a lot of cultural awareness. Let's move on to a situation that requires a bit more caution: giving and receiving compliments. Everyone loves a compliment, but sometimes we don't know how to react. In some cultures, it is polite to deny a compliment. Someone says your English is very good, and you say, no, it is terrible. In English-speaking cultures, this can actually be a bit awkward. It can look like you are fishing for more compliments or that you don't trust the other person's judgment. The best way to receive a compliment is simply to say thank you. You can add a little bit to it. Thank you, I have been practicing a lot. Or thanks, that is really kind of you to say. Accepting the compliment gracefully makes the other person feel good too. Giving compliments is also an art. Avoid commenting on physical appearance unless you know the person well, as it can be seen as too personal. Instead, focus on choices or actions. Instead of saying, you look thin, which can be sensitive, say, that dress looks great on you, or I love your shoes. Complimenting someone's work is always safe. You did a great job on that presentation. Or, your house looks beautiful, have you decorated recently? These compliments open up conversation. If someone compliments your clothes, you can share where you got them. Thanks, I got it at that new store in the mall. It is a nice way to share information and be friendly. Now, I want to talk about a very specific type of conversation, the hypothetical conversation. This means talking about things that are not real or situations that are just imagination. This is where we use the conditional structures. The second conditional is very useful for this. It uses the structure. For example, imagine I ask you, what would you do if you won the lottery? This is a classic question. Notice I didn't say, what will you do if you win the lottery? Because winning the lottery is unlikely. It is hypothetical. So you answer, if I won the lottery, I would buy a big house, or I would travel the world. Notice the use of would. It is the key to this grammar structure. We use this for advice too. If a friend has a problem, you can use the second conditional to give advice without being bossy. You can say, if I were you, I would talk to the boss. The phrase, if I were you, is the standard way to give personal advice. It puts you in their shoes. Let's practice this structure mentally. I want you to think about a dream vacation. Finish this sentence in your mind. If I could go anywhere in the world, I would go to. This structure allows you to dream and express desires in a very natural conversational way. It moves your English from simple facts, I go to work, to complex ideas, I would go if I could. This is a big step in your fluency journey. Let's discuss something that can be quite stressful: traveling by air. Air travel has its own specific vocabulary and procedures. From the moment you arrive at the airport, you are in a specific environment. First, you go to the check-in desk. Here, the agent will ask for your passport and might ask, are you checking any bags? This means, are you giving large suitcases to be put in the cargo hold? You might say, yes, I have one bag to check. They will then give you a boarding pass. This is your ticket to get on the plane. It shows your seat number and gate number. After checking in, you go through security. This is where you might hear commands like, please remove your laptop from your bag, or please take off your belt and shoes. The phrase remove and take off are interchangeable here. Once you are through security, you wait at the gate. The gate is the door where you walk onto the plane. You have to listen carefully for announcements. You might hear, This is the final boarding call for Flight 202 to London. This means the plane is about to leave and you must hurry. On the plane, the flight attendants give safety instructions. They talk about the seatbelt fastened low and tight across your lap. They mention the life vest under your seat. Knowing these words makes the flight less intimidating because you understand the safety procedures. What happens if things go wrong? Let's talk about delays and cancellations. If your flight is delayed, it will leave later than planned. You might hear, "We apologize for the delay due to bad weather." If the flight is canceled, it will not leave at all. This is a major inconvenience. In this situation, you need to go to the customer service desk. You might ask, "When is the next available flight?" Or "Will you provide accommodation for the night?" These are important questions. We use the word accommodation to mean a place to stay like a hotel. Being able to handle these stressful travel situations in English is a superpower. It gives you independence. I want to touch briefly on the topic of cultural etiquette regarding time. In English-speaking countries, being on time is usually very important, especially for business or formal appointments. If you have a meeting at 9 a.m., you should be there by 9 a.m. If you are late, you need to apologize. You might say, "I am so sorry I am running a bit late." The phrase "running late" is a very common way to explain that you are behind schedule. It sounds less serious than saying, "I am late." If you think you will be more than a few minutes late, it is polite to text or call. "I should be there in about 10 minutes. Traffic is really bad." This shows respect for the other person's time. However, there is a concept called fashionably late. This applies to social parties, usually in the evening. If a party starts at 7 p.m., it is often not expected that you arrive exactly at 7 p.m. Arriving at 7:15 or 7:30 is often acceptable and considered fashionable. It gives the host a bit of time to get ready. But for dinner parties where a meal is served, you must be on time. You don't want the food to get cold. Understanding these unwritten rules of time helps you integrate better into the culture. Now let's have a quick chat about learning strategies. How do you actually learn all of this? One method I really love is called shadowing. It sounds a bit mysterious, but it is actually very simple. Shadowing is when you listen to a piece of audio, maybe this podcast or a dialogue from a movie, and you repeat what the speaker says immediately after they say it, like a shadow. You try to match their speed, their intonation, and their emotion. Do not pause the audio. Just speak over it or right after it. This forces your mouth to move in new ways and trains your ear to hear the rhythm of English. Try it with a sentence, I say. I will say a sentence, and I want you to say it exactly like me immediately after. Ready? I have been looking forward to this all week. Go ahead. Did you copy the stress on the word looking? Did you copy the rising intonation at the end? It is not just about the words, it is about the music of the language. Shadowing is one of the fastest ways to improve your pronunciation because it stops you from thinking too much about the grammar and lets you focus on the sound. Another great strategy is to change your environment. If your phone is in your native language, change it to English. If you use social media, follow English accounts. This forces you to engage with English every day without it feeling like studying. You will learn words like share, like comment settings, privacy, and home screen without even trying. This is called immersive learning. You are creating a little English world around yourself. It makes a huge difference. I also want to encourage you to keep a vocabulary notebook. But don't just write the word. Write the sentence you found it in, and write a sentence of your own. If you learn the word exhausted, which means very tired, write this down. I was exhausted after the gym. This connects the word to a real context. It helps you remember it better. Just writing a list of words is hard to remember, but writing the story of the word is easy to remember. We have one more important topic to cover today, and that is the power of the word get. You might think get is a simple word, but it is actually one of the most versatile and useful verbs in the English language. Native speakers use it for everything. If you don't know the specific verb for an action, you can often use get and it will work. Let's look at the many faces of get. First, it can mean to receive or obtain. I got an email from my boss. I got a new car. Second, it can mean to become. It is getting dark. I am getting tired. Here, get shows a change of state. Third, it can mean to arrive. When did you get home? I got here at 6. But wait, there is more. We use get for transportation. I get the bus to work. I get a taxi. We use it for understanding. Oh, I get it. That means I understand. We use it for answering the phone. Can you get that? That means, can you answer the phone? And we use it in countless phrasal verbs like get up, get over, get along, get away. Mastering the word get is a shortcut to fluency. If you can use get naturally, you sound less like a student and more like a speaker. Try to replace formal verbs with get in your daily speech. Instead of saying, I received an email, say, I got an email. Instead of saying, I became angry, say, I got angry. It makes your speech sound more dynamic and less stiff. I am so happy you are still here with me, ready to continue our deep dive into the English language. We have already covered so much ground, haven't we? We talked about greetings and technology, and even visiting the doctor. But there is a whole world of conversation left to explore. Today, for this next part of our journey together, I want to focus on some slightly more complex social situations and some specific vocabulary that will really help you express your personality. We are going to talk about housing and where we live. We will discuss how to describe people and their personalities. We will navigate the world of driving and cars, and we will even talk about how to handle those awkward moments in conversation. So get comfortable, settle in, and let's keep going. Let's start with a very practical topic, finding a place to live. Whether you are moving to a new city or just looking for a new apartment, knowing how to talk about housing is essential. When you look for an apartment, you will often see abbreviations in the ads. You might see 2B1B. This stands for 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. It is very common shorthand. When you call the landlord or the real estate agent, you need to ask the right questions. You might start by saying, "Hi, I am calling about the apartment you have listed online. Is it still available?" This is the standard opening. The landlord might ask a few screening questions like, "How many people will be living there?" or "Do you have any pets?" When you go to view the apartment, you need specific vocabulary to describe what you see. You might walk in and think it feels small. Instead of just saying it is small, you can use words like cozy or compact. Cozy sounds positive. It suggests warmth and comfort. Compact sounds neutral. It means it uses space efficiently. But if you want to be negative, you might say it is cramped. Cramped means there is not enough space and it feels tight. These subtle differences in word choice are what make your English precise. You might also talk about the lighting. Does the apartment get a lot of natural light? We say, "Is it bright?" Or you might ask, Which way does it face? If it faces south in the northern hemisphere, it will be sunnier. Another important topic when renting is money. You need to ask about the rent, obviously, but you also need to ask about utilities. Utilities are the basic services like electricity, water, gas, and internet. You should ask, are utilities included in the rent? Sometimes the rent covers everything. Sometimes you have to pay extra. You also need to ask about a deposit. This is money you pay up front to cover any damage you might cause. It is usually returned to you when you move out if the apartment is in good condition. We call this a security deposit. So a full sentence would be, how much is the security deposit and when do I get it back? These are the questions that show you are a serious and responsible tenant. Now let's imagine you have moved into your new home. A few weeks later, you notice a problem. Maybe the kitchen sink is leaking or the heating is not working. You need to call the landlord to report a maintenance issue. This requires clear descriptive language. Do not just say, the sink is broken. Be specific. You could say, there is a leak under the kitchen sink. The water is dripping quite fast. Or the heating isn't working. The radiators are cold. Being specific helps the landlord know who to send to fix it. They might send a plumber for water issues or an electrician for electrical issues. If the landlord says, I will send someone over, you should ask, when can I expect them? This helps you plan your day so you aren't waiting at home for hours without knowing when they will arrive. Moving on from housing, let's talk about something that is a huge part of our social lives, describing people and personalities. We often need to describe our friends, our colleagues, or even strangers to other people. For B1 and B2 learners, it is easy to stick to basic words like nice, good, or bad. But English has a rich vocabulary for personality. Let's look at the word nice. It is a good word, but it is very general. If someone is nice, what does that actually mean? Maybe they are kind. Kind means they care about others and want to help. Maybe they are friendly, which means they act warmly towards people. Or maybe they are thoughtful, which means they think about other people's feelings and needs. Let's look at some stronger, more descriptive words. Imagine a friend who loves meeting new people and is always the life of the party. You wouldn't just say they are outgoing. You could say they are extroverted or sociable. On the other hand, if a friend prefers quiet time and doesn't like big crowds, you might say they are shy or introverted. But be careful with the word shy. Shy can sometimes have a negative feeling of being afraid to speak. Introverted is a more neutral description of a personality type. You could also say reserved, which means they don't show their feelings easily. What about a friend who is very relaxed and doesn't get angry easily? We call this person laid back. It is a wonderful adjective. He is really laid back, nothing bothers him. If someone is the opposite and they get stressed or worried about small details, we might say they are uptight or high-strung. Uptight has a slightly negative feeling, suggesting they are too tense. Another great personality word is stubborn. This describes someone who refuses to change their mind. He is so stubborn once he makes a decision, he never listens to advice. There is a similar word determined, but determined is usually positive. Determined means you work hard to achieve a goal. Stubborn means you are just being difficult. The difference is in the context. Let's try a small exercise. Think of a person you know well, maybe a family member or a best friend. Try to describe their personality using 3 specific adjectives, not just good or nice. I will give you an example. My best friend is incredibly supportive. She always listens to my problems. She is also quite ambitious. She works very hard for her career. But sometimes she can be a little bit impulsive, which means she makes decisions quickly without thinking. See how much detail those 3 sentences give. It paints a clear picture of the person. Try to do this yourself, silently or out loud right now. It is excellent practice for your speaking skills. Now I want to switch gears completely and talk about driving. If you are planning to travel or live in an English-speaking country, driving is often a necessity. And driving involves a lot of specific commands and vocabulary. Let's start with the car itself. Do you know the difference between the brake and the accelerator? The brake is what you use to stop the car. The accelerator, often called the gas pedal, is what you use to make the car go faster. In the UK and some other countries, you might hear the word accelerator, but also the term throttle, though that is more technical. In the US, you will often hear hit the gas, which means go faster or step on it. If you are using a GPS or a navigation app on your phone, you will hear specific directions. Make a U-turn. This means turn around and go the other way. Take the next exit. This is used on highways or motorways. You might hear keep left or keep right. This is important for staying in the correct lane. A very common instruction is, at the roundabout, take the second exit. A roundabout is a circular intersection where traffic moves around a central island. They are very common in the UK and Europe, but less so in the US. Navigating a roundabout can be scary, but the language is simple. First exit, second exit, third exit. What happens if you have a problem with the car? Maybe you get a flat tire. This means one of your tires has lost air or popped. You might need to pull over. Pull over means to drive your car to the side of the road and stop. You might say, I need to pull over, I think I have a flat tire. Another common problem is running out of gas or petrol. In the US, they say gas short for gasoline. In the UK, they say petrol. If this happens, you are stranded. You might need to call a friend and say, I ran out of gas on the highway, can you come help me? Or maybe your car won't start. This usually means there is a problem with the battery. I think the battery is dead. These are stressful situations, but knowing the vocabulary helps you get help faster. Let's talk about one of the most difficult social skills in any language managing conflict. Sometimes we disagree with people, and sometimes those disagreements turn into arguments. How do we handle this in English while remaining polite and constructive? The key is to use I statements instead of you statements. This is a psychological trick, but it is very useful for English learners. Instead of saying, you are wrong, say I see it differently. Instead of saying, you never listen to me, say, I feel like I am not being heard. This shifts the focus from attacking the other person to expressing your own feelings. It lowers the tension. If someone is angry with you and they are shouting, it can be intimidating. You might need to ask them to calm down. But saying calm down is often a bad idea. It usually makes people angrier. Instead, try saying, let's take a breather. A breather is a short break. It implies that you want to pause the conversation and come back to it when everyone is calmer. You can say, I can see you are upset. Let's take a break and talk about this in an hour. This shows maturity. It shows you respect the other person's emotions, but you also want a solution. Apologizing is also a crucial skill. We all make mistakes. There are many ways to say sorry. The simplest is, I am sorry. But sometimes we need to say more. If you made a mistake at work, you might say, I apologize for the oversight. Oversight means a small mistake or something that was missed. It sounds professional. If you hurt a friend's feelings, you might say, "I am really sorry, I didn't mean to hurt you." The phrase "I didn't mean to" means it was not my intention. It was an accident. It helps to repair the relationship. And when someone apologizes to you, the polite response is often, "No worries," or "It is okay." But if it was a serious issue, you might say, "I appreciate the apology. I need some time to get over it." This is honest and fair. I want to move on to a topic that I personally love, which is discussing movies and books. This is a fantastic topic for B1 and B2 learners because it allows you to use a wide range of descriptive adjectives and past tenses. When someone asks you, "Have you seen any good movies lately?" you don't want to just say yes or no. You want to give a recommendation or a warning. If you like the movie, you can say, "I highly recommend it. It was gripping." Gripping means it held your attention completely. You couldn't stop watching. You might say, "The plot was really twisty." A twist is a surprise in the story. A twisty plot means there were many surprises. If you didn't like the movie, you have many options for criticism. You could say it was a bit predictable. Predictable means you knew exactly what was going to happen before it happened. There were no surprises. You might say it was dragged out. This means the story was too long and slow, or you could say the acting was terrible. The acting refers to the performance of the actors. We often talk about the ending of a movie, too. You might say the ending was so disappointing I expected more, or the ending was heartwarming, it made me cry. Being able to critique art and media is a very satisfying part of language learning. It allows you to share your taste and connect with people over shared interests. Let's touch on the topic of clothing and fashion. Describing what people are wearing is useful for everyday life. Maybe you are meeting a friend at a crowded place, and you need to tell them what you are wearing so they can find you. You can say, "I am wearing a blue jumper and jeans." In American English, a jumper is a pinafore dress, but in British English, a jumper is a sweater. This is a classic difference to be aware of. If you want to compliment someone's outfit, you can say, "That jacket really suits you." Suits you means it looks good on you, it matches your style or color. Do not say, "It fits you," unless you are talking about the size being correct. Fits refers to size. Suits refers to style. If you go shopping for clothes, which we discussed briefly earlier, you might need to ask for a different fit. You might say, "This is a bit tight around the shoulders," or "It is too loose." Loose is the opposite of tight. You might also talk about the material. Is it cotton wool or polyester? Wool is warm and often from sheep. Cotton is light and breathable. Polyester is synthetic. Knowing these words helps you make good choices. You might ask, "Is this machine washable?" This means, can I put it in the washing machine? Or do I have to dry clean it? Dry clean is a professional cleaning process for delicate clothes. These are practical questions that save you from ruining your favorite shirt. Now, I want to talk about something that is becoming very common in the modern world, working from home. Many of us have jobs where we don't go into an office. This brings a new set of vocabulary. We talk about remote work. If you work remotely, you might say, "I work from home." You might have video calls, which we often call Zoom meetings or virtual meetings. When you start a call, you might say, "Can everyone see my screen?" This is the standard check before presenting. You might experience technical glitches, which are small problems with the video or audio. We also talk about work-life balance. This is the balance between your job and your personal life. When you work from home, it can be hard to separate the two. You might say, I need to set boundaries. Setting boundaries means making rules for yourself, like not checking emails after 6 p.m. The phrase commuting is also relevant here. Commuting is the act of traveling to work. If you work from home, you might say, I love not having to commute. It saves so much time, but sometimes you miss the social interaction. You might say, I feel a bit isolated working alone all day. Isolated means feeling alone or separated from others. Discussing your work setup is a great way to connect with colleagues. How do you manage your time? Do you prefer working from home or the office? These are excellent conversation starters for the modern workplace. Let's move to a fun and very common social activity, going to the gym or exercising. Health and fitness are huge topics. If you go to a gym, you will hear words like treadmill weights and yoga mat. You might have a membership. A membership is the fee you pay to use the gym. You might say, I need to cancel my membership, or I want to sign up for a membership. When you exercise, you want to focus on different muscle groups. Maybe today is leg day or arm day. If you are lifting heavy weights, you need a spotter. A spotter is a person who stands next to you to make sure you don't drop the weight. It is a safety term. Can you give me a spot? Is a very common question in the gym. We also use a lot of phrasal verbs related to exercise. We say workout. I am going to work out tonight. This means exercise. We say warm up. You should always warm up before you run. Warm up means do light exercises to prepare your body. And we say cool down. Stretch to cool down after your workout. Cool down means slow down gradually to lower your heart rate. If you are into running, you might talk about your pace. Pace is your speed. I am trying to improve my pace. Or you might talk about stamina. Stamina is your ability to keep going for a long time without getting tired. I want to build up my stamina. These terms make you sound like a pro. I want to spend a moment discussing the difference between tell, say, and speak. These words are often confused. We use tell when we say who we are talking to. I told him to leave. We do not say, I said him to leave. That is wrong. We use say when we focus on the words spoken. He said that he was tired. We use speak for the general ability or the action of talking. Can you speak English? I need to speak to the manager. So remember, tell is usually followed by a person. Say is usually followed by the message. Speak is usually followed by a language or used without an object. Getting this right instantly makes your grammar sound much cleaner. Let's review this rule with a few examples. Imagine you have a secret. You want to tell your friend. You wouldn't say, I want to speak my friend a secret. You wouldn't say, I want to say my friend a secret. You would say, I want to tell my friend a secret. Now imagine you are quoting someone. She said hello. You wouldn't say, she told hello. That sounds wrong. You say, she said hello. Now imagine a formal situation. May I speak to Mr. Smith? This is polite. You could also say, can I talk to Mr. Smith? Talk and speak are very similar in this context, but if it is about languages, always use speak. I speak Spanish. Do not say, I talk Spanish. We are nearing the end of this segment, but I have one more vital topic for you today. It is about the phrase. You know what I mean? This is a filler phrase, but it is also a way to check understanding. Native speakers use this constantly. It is like a punctuation mark in speech. You might say, it was really cold, you know what I mean, like freezing. It invites the listener to agree. It creates a sense of shared experience. However, be careful not to overuse it. Using it once or twice in a conversation is natural. Using it in every sentence can be annoying. But listening for it will help you understand the rhythm of native speech. You will hear it everywhere once you start paying attention to it. Another similar phrase is at the end of the day. We use this to summarize a situation or to emphasize the most important point. For example, we can argue about the details, but at the end of the day, we need to finish the project. It means ultimately or finally. It is a strong phrase to use when you want to conclude a discussion. Using these types of discourse markers or linking phrases shows that you understand the flow of the conversation. You aren't just listing facts, you are connecting ideas. That is the mark of a B2 speaker. So as we finish this part of our learning session, I want you to think about all these new words and phrases. We talked about housing, we described personality, we drove cars, we managed conflict, we reviewed movies, we discussed working from home, and we clarified tell, say, and speak. That is a huge amount of progress. I am so proud of you for sticking with it. Remember that learning is not linear. Some days you will feel like a genius, and some days you will forget the word for table. That is okay. Just keep coming back. Keep listening. Keep speaking. If you have any questions, or if there is a specific topic you want me to cover in the future, feel free to leave a comment. I read them all. Also, if you are finding these episodes helpful, please share them with a friend who is also learning English. Learning together is always better. Don't forget to subscribe to English in Advance so you never miss a single lesson. I am Jessica, and it has been an absolute pleasure being your guide today. Keep practicing, keep smiling, and I will see you in the next part of our adventure. Goodbye for now and happy learning.